had asked me this morning to do this, and I forgot, so here I am. Just as a reminder that next week, Dr. James Markham will be speaking at the Clinton Lawrence Church. And then on Sunday, the 17th, Dr. Markham, along with Patty Dmitriev, who is a plant-based chef, will be here from 11 a.m. to 1:15 p.m. on Sunday the 17th. Dr. Markham is going to be doing free physician consultations. If anyone has a specific thing that they would like to speak to the doctor about in private, please let me know. You don't need to tell me what the health thing is, just your name, so that I can get it to Victoria so that you can be sure to be on his list as one to see. And also Patty Dmitriev, the chef, will be here as well. Then from 1:30 to 3:30, Patty will be doing a home-style plant-based cooking class with free samples. So please plan to attend if you can, going on next Sabbath, Dr. Markham at Clinton Lawrence, and then here on Sunday. And invite your friends, family, neighbors, whomever. The other thing, just so you kind of know any visitors that might be here that aren't aware, January, it has not, the board will be deciding on the date, that I have heard back from Amira El-Haddad, who is the head of Religious Liberty for Southern Union. She has penciled in 2 dates for us to choose from. We can't get her on January 10th, was actually Religious Liberty Sabbath. She's already speaking that day. But we can get her either the following Sabbath, the 17th, or the 24th. We'll make that decision tomorrow at board. So she will be here speaking on religious liberty in January, and to speak about what's going on in our area and in our conference. March 17th, Dr. Conrad Vine will be here with us. We feel so privileged that he has been able to open up a space on his calendar, which is filled out 2 years in advance now. And he will be coming here to speak on where we are in the stream of time. He will be doing the sermon on the 17th, and then he will also have an afternoon program as well. I've reached out to a few other ministries. I won't name names right now because I have not heard back. But keep all of that in your prayers. There are some really wonderful ministries that are speaking on current events with religious liberty and what's going on in our country and worldwide. And without anything more, we will bring Eva Tompkins back to continue her program. And we want to thank you too, Eva, for clearing her schedule, a woman who's working 2 jobs and doing this. So we're so grateful.
Amen. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words. And thank you for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to be here and meet with you all. Okay. Before we get started, let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you so much for the opportunity to be here again in your house, Lord, and we thank you for the wonderful lunch that you've provided for us and that you guided the hands to prepare for us. And we just thank you, Lord. We hope that you'll be here with us, Lord. We pray that you'll be here with us, and we pray that you'll open the hearts and minds of everyone who's watching. And please lead us, Lord. Please guide us in our lives through these last days. And please be there for us. We know that you're there to comfort us, and your word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. And we thank you for that, Lord. And we ask all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. So we're going to talk today, this afternoon, about digital currency, Revelation 13, and preparing for Satan's no buy, no sell policy. And I'll be talking about AI as well, and I'll be going into much greater depth than this morning on these things. None of this should be considered financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not licensed to give financial advice. I'm a trader. But I can't tell you what to do with your 401k. I can't possibly know your financial life or your whole aspects of your life or what you own or what you have. So I can't possibly advise you with respect to that. So none of this should be considered financial advice. It's just for educational purposes only, and really my point is to let us see the times that we're living in and how we can prepare accordingly and do God's will. So I'll skip that one. So why am I here? Sister White tells us we're called upon to be watchmen. We are Christ's ambassadors, watchmen unto the house of Israel, to see the dangers that await souls and give them warning. And that's from the Review and Herald, October 20th, 1896. And she also said in the Review and Herald in 1903, "The Lord is soon coming. The watchmen on the walls of Zion are called upon to awake to their God-given responsibility. Many of them are in the stupor of insensibility. God calls for watchmen who, in the power of the Spirit, will give to the world a message. Watchmen who will proclaim the time of night. He calls for watchmen who will arouse men and women from their lethargy, lest they sleep the sleep of death." And so we live in really important times right now, and we're privileged to live in this time. You know, when we can see them build the architecture for Satan's no buy, no sell policy, like that's pretty exciting. I mean, the time of trouble, you know, God will protect us. We don't have to worry about it. It's going to be interesting. We're going to live in interesting times, but it's pretty exciting. So let's look again once more at Revelation 13, 15 through 16. And that states, "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads." And of course, Revelation 13, 17 states, "And that no man might buy or sell, save that he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name." So this is really very important. We know the Bible is telling us that at some point we are all going to be faced with a choice, and no one can escape this test. When I go and speak on this issue, I get a number of questions, and a lot of them amount to, how can I keep my current standard of living during the end times? That's not going to happen. Sorry to break it to you. It's not going to happen. But we're all going to be faced with this test. Are we going to follow God and worship God and follow his commandments? Or are we going to follow the dictates of men that are going to be contrary to God's commandments? We should be following God because we love God and we want to do his will. So there's going to be pressure put on us to bear financially to try to coerce us to do the wrong thing. And we don't want to do that. And Sister White also talks about it. The time is coming when we cannot sell at any price. The decree will soon go forth prohibiting men to buy or sell of any man save that he hath the mark of the beast. And I'll skip the next slide because I talked about that this morning. But the promise in Revelation 3:5 is that he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment. And I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. So that is the blessed promise that God has for us. You know, God will take care of us. God will save us through the tribulation, just like he saved the Israelites through the plagues. He will protect his people. So we don't have anything to worry about. But we're going to live in interesting times. So let's talk about CBDC and Satan's no buy, no sell policy. And just for someone who hasn't heard this before, or it doesn't hurt to see this again and again, I find. Because in the West, we are so accustomed to having freedom or perceived freedom, relative freedom. We can't really imagine someone telling us we can't buy or sell something. We can't really imagine someone taking control of our bank account and saying, you can buy this, you can't buy that. But CBDC, central bank digital currency, is fully programmable, fully traceable digital currency that is centralized or distributed by a government or its central bank. And because the one authority is issuing it, they can program it so that you can't buy certain things. They can program it to tell you what you can or can't do. They can program it to try to elicit certain behaviors from you and corral you into doing what they want you to do. So it means that the government can surveil all of your financial transactions in real time and control when, where, and upon what you can spend the currency. And it's not just me saying this. I'm going to show you quotes from central bankers and economic experts saying the exact same thing. So I'm not making this up. This isn't a conspiracy theory. I could call the conspiracy theory a lot during the pandemic and conspiracy theorist, and I'm not. I'm just telling you what they're saying. So why are they a threat to liberty? With CBDCs, the government would have the authority to decide and the power to enforce how you may or may not spend the CBDC. And there will be a digital wallet, there'll be a digital ID, so that they can track you and do all these things. And these are not my words. I will show you the Bank of International Settlements, the central bank above all the central banks. The general manager said that same thing in October of 2020. So CBDCs are designed to financially constrain the user in any way the government wishes to. That's the whole point of central bank digital currency, and I'll show you another expert that says that as well. So here's the Bank of International Settlements general manager, Augustin Karsten, in 2020, October 2020, describing the difference between cash and digital currency. And he says, you can find this video on YouTube, you can find it on Rumble, it's out there. It's just a minute or so long. And he says, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. There's a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who is using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a $1,000 peso bill today. The key difference with CBDC is the central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine that use of that expression of central bank liability, and will have the technology to enforce that. So when he says expression of central bank liability, if the central bank issues you central bank digital currency, it's considered a liability on the central bank. So that's what he's talking about. When they issue you the CBDC, he's telling you they'll have the absolute control over the rules and regulations as to how you can spend it, what you can do with it. And they can see exactly what you're doing with it. They can't see what you're doing with a $100 bill, but with CBDC, they can see exactly what you're doing. And that's the general manager for the Bank of International Settlements telling you that. That's not just me telling you that. So we saw this slide earlier today, but it bears repeating. With the CBDC, the government can see all of your transactions in real time and tax you instantly. They can mandate any procedures must be taken. They can turn off your money if you don't comply. They can turn off your money if they don't like what you post on social media, if they don't like your religious practices, any behavior they want to elicit from you. They can control you with the CBDC. They can turn off your money or freeze your balance until you comply. The CBDC could be programmed to expire within 30 days, and they like that feature because they can control the money supply better. Your money could be programmed so that it could not be used to buy certain things, or if they wanted to lock you down in a certain area, it wouldn't work outside that area. And I'll show you another expert that says that as well. The central bank could institute negative interest rates, which would mean a portion of that money would come out of your account. These are all the things that they could do with central bank digital currency. And that's not just me saying this. I'll show you central bankers and experts who are saying this as well. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's from Neil Kashkari, who's the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. And what he says in his remarks is basically that CBDC doesn't solve any actual problems. It doesn't provide any benefit to the user. It only provides control to enable central bankers to monitor all transactions, impose negative interest rates, and deduct taxes from your accounts in real time. And here's basically what he said. This is a direct quote of what he said. He said, I keep asking anybody at the Fed or outside the Fed to explain to me what problem this is solving. I can send anybody in this room $5 with Venmo right now. And then someone laughed in the background. And he said, right? No, seriously. So what is it that a CBDC could do that Venmo can't do? And all I get is a bunch of hand waving. Well, China's doing it. He said, well, I see why China would do it. If they want to monitor every one of your transactions, you could do that with a central bank digital currency. You can't do that with Venmo. If you wanted to impose negative interest rates, you could do that with a central bank digital currency. You can't do that with Venmo. And if you want to directly tax customer accounts, you could do that with a central bank digital currency. You can't do that with Venmo. So I get why China would be interested, but why would the American people be for that? And the point is, the American people wouldn't be for that if they understood that. No, they would stand up against this. So that's coming from Neil Kashkari, the president of the Federal Reserve Bank in Minneapolis. Bo Lee is an IMF deputy managing director, and he's a former deputy governor of the People's Bank of China, that's China's central bank, talking about the programmability of money at an IMF panel in 2023. And it's the programmability aspect that's one of the most dangerous aspects of central bank digital currency. And he says, and financial inclusion is one of the buzzwords that they use for reasons why central bank digital currency is good. Then you can bank the unbanked. Financial inclusion is including people who are not banking in the banking system. It's really including them into the corral that they're trying to enclose around everyone is what financial inclusion really means. But he says financial inclusion is through what we call programmability. That is, CBDC can allow government agencies and private sector players to program, to create smart contracts, to allow targeted policy functions, for example, welfare payment, for example, consumption coupon, for example, food stamp. By programming CBDC, those monies can be precisely targeted for what kind of people can own and what kind of use this money can be utilized, for example, for food. So this potential programmability can help government agencies to precisely target their support to those people who need support. That way they can also improve financial inclusion. So they're saying they're trying to give you support. They're trying to give these people money who aren't in the system so they can lure them into the system and control them, and they can dictate what you spend the money on, like with the welfare payment. That's how they would control that. So here's another central banker telling you the type of control that they will exercise over you with a central bank digital currency. This is Professor Richard Warner. He's a brilliant economist, and he gave this interview for a documentary that's called The End of Money, CBDC, The End of Money. It's a very good interview. I took a lot of his quotes and I have them here for you just because they're so illustrative of what they could do with central bank digital currency that I feel like people they have trouble wrapping their heads around these things, so I include all these quotes so that you can understand the power that they would have with central bank digital currency. He's a professor of banking and economics. He's a lecturer at the University of Oxford. He's the author of the book Princes of the Yen. He was recently on Tucker Carlson, and that is a great interview also, talking about his book and when it came out, and the CIA, came to him. He's got a lot of stories around that. It's a very good interview. He's also the father of the quantitative easing monetary concept, and he's an expert on central banks and CBDCs. And he said in this interview, CBDCs are presented as if it's something brand new, when the reality is that we've been using BDCs, bank digital currency, for many decades. When we use our credit cards and our debit cards, we're essentially, and not using cash, we're essentially using bank digital currency. They're giving us credit line and we're going out and using it, and nothing really physical is passing. It's bank digital currency. And he says, there's nothing new about that, and it works well. Bank digital currencies, that's our current system. So the only difference is the central aspect. And who's pushing for this? Well, the central planners, the central bankers are pushing for this. He says, is there a need for it? No, there is absolutely no need for this, because the current financial system does not have any problems in terms of settlement and transactions because you have choice. Once you introduce CBDCs, there's many risks and dangers of that, but one obvious one is that you're actually going to reduce choices, because for CBDCs to properly do their job, from the perspective of the issuer, from the central banks, you need to get rid of the competition. You need to get rid of cash. That's actually a declared goal of CBDCs. You've got plenty of studies by central banks and other economists in favor of CBDCs arguing that we need to abolish cash and then introduce CBDCs, because then we can have negative interest rates. We can take money directly out of people's pockets. While you still have cash, you can flee from the financial system and put your money in cash, and then they can't punish you with negative interest rates. That's why they want to abolish cash. But most of all, the really big dangers of CBDCs are the programmability, which is essentially, it's not even your money. Your money becomes potential money because it depends on a central planner to agree that you should now be allowed to spend this money at this location for this particular transaction and then this particular volume, if you want to do. But why should that be conditional? When they describe programmability, that's what it's all about. And he's absolutely right. If you want to use your central bank digital currency, the central bank's got to agree that you can use it, that you're fit to use it, and that this particular thing is an item that you should buy. So he's very right about that. So the push for CBDCs, he says, is the final step in a multi-decade program by central planners to increase their power over the people, over countries. This is the ultimate step because the powers of CBDCs are so extraordinary that, I mean, even the worst dictators in past centuries could only have dreamt of having such enormous power over the lives of so many people. And he's absolutely right. Dictators in the past, Ceausescu, any Stalin, any of these dictators, they would love to have this power and this technology. On CBDCs and AI, Professor Warner states, one counter-argument against this would be to say, well, okay, it's a power tool for central planners, but surely they're too busy, and how could they ever plan and micromanage, 80 million people in Germany, or, all these millions of people? Well, that's where AI comes in, isn't it? In other words, it will be algorithms that will, for the majority, most of the majority, control their spending in the future. The micromanaging decision will then be automated. That's even more dystopian. You have no right to appeal the algorithm because there's so many masses, you can't practically have an appeal process. You just won't be able to use your money for certain things, and there's nothing you can do. And here's where that interview can be found if you wish to find it. But his comments are so illustrative of the power that a central bank would have with central bank digital currency. Any programmable digital currency, whether it's central bank currency or not, that's the power that they would have. This was an article that came out in 2023, in July 11th, 2023. Brazil has been working on their CBDC, and it's in the pilot stage. And theirs is called the Real, the digital Real. And they had released their code out to the public for them to, examine and look at for public comment. And a blockchain developer looked at it, and he found that Brazil's CBDC contained code that would allow Brazil's central bank to, at its will, freeze and unfreeze accounts, increase and decrease account balances, move currency from one address to another, and create or burn digital real from a specific address. So this is the control that Brazil's central bank would have over this central bank digital currency. That's the code that's in there, and it enables them to do that, according to this blockchain developer. So this is, again, the type of control they would have with central bank digital currency. And CBDCs are being explored, tested, and developed worldwide. According to data from the Atlantic Council, there's 134 countries and currency unions, and that number is the same today. I looked at the numbers before I came here, and it's the same. And it represents about 98% of global GDP, which are exploring a CBDC. So this is truly a worldwide thing. All the countries exploring and testing central bank digital currency comprise about 98% of global GDP. That's huge. And to date, there's some countries that have launched their own retail CBDC. Nigeria launched with the e-Naira, the Bahamas with Sand Dollar, and then there's some Caribbean countries that are part of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union that have Dcash, and Jamaica has the Jamdex. So there was a 2022 survey conducted by the Bank of International Settlements that revealed that 93% of the 86 central banks that surveyed have or are developing a CBDC, and it was projected that there could be 15 retail CBDCs publicly circulating by 2030. So this is the map. It was last updated July 2025 of both retail and wholesale CBDCs and where they're being explored around the world in various stages of development. So this is truly a worldwide thing. And you can find this map and this information on the Atlantic Council's website. They have a CBDC tracker. There's another CBDC tracker that's also very good. This is retail only. The map before was wholesale and retail. This is retail only. So wholesale means it's CBDC, central bank digital currency, that's passed between institutions, financial institutions and banking institutions, rather than individual. The retail is the CBDC that's issued to the individual consumer. And this is retail, but this is from cbdctracker.org. I find their data is like a little bit more complete than Atlantic Council's data, but this is the map of retail only according to CBDC Tracker. And you can see how much of the world is covered on this map. I mean, almost every country is highlighted. A list of countries that are in the launch stage, like I mentioned, are Jamaica, the Bahamas, and Nigeria with a sand dollar. The Dcash, Eastern Caribbean Union one, they kind of been floating back and forth between pilot and launched. Some of these countries have done that. China has been using their CBDC for some time, but because there's such low adoption, they keep calling it a pilot program, even though it's pretty much fully developed. It's just not popular at all. And these are lists of currencies that are in CBDCs that are in the pilot stage and the countries that are doing it. The digital euro, they expect in October to be at a decision point. Christine Lagarde, the ECB president, she stated publicly that they expect them to reach a decision in October 2025 as to whether they're going to move forward, and she's putting pressure on them to move forward. It's basically the European Parliament and Council have to get together and, basically pass it, but she wants them to move forward in October 2025. And these are more of the countries that are in the pilot stage. And so how would a CBDC look in our country? Well, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has testified, and he said many times, he testified recently before the Senate Banking Committee in March of last year, if we are ever to do something like this, and we're a very long way from even thinking about it, we would do this through the banking system. The last thing we would want with the Federal Reserve would be to have individual accounts for all Americans, or any Americans for that matter. And he said this many times. When he's asked about CBDC, he says, we're not even thinking about it. We're not even thinking of thinking about it. We're not even thinking about thinking about it. He says, so you don't have to worry about it. But I'll show you that that's not actually true. They've actually been thinking about it and testing it, and it's already fully developed, basically. But he says it would be done through the banking system. So that is the synthetic model of CBDC. Direct issue is direct from the central bank to the individual consumer. A synthetic model is where it goes from the central bank to a major bank like Chase or Wells Fargo or something like that, and then it's distributed to you, the individual, the consumer. And he said in September 2022, during an event hosted by the Bank of France, that if we were to pursue a CBDC, it would at a minimum have 4 characteristics. Number 1 is intermediated. That means it would be distributed to you, to a major bank like Chase or Wells Fargo or Bank of America, and then to you. So that's intermediation. Second is privacy protected, but the third is identity verified, so it would not be anonymous. There's no way to be anonymous with a central bank digital currency. The government is going to know who you are with your digital ID and know what you're spending your money on. There's no anonymity. With cash, you have anonymity. They can't know, like the general manager of the BIS, Augustin Carstens, he said, we don't know where you're spending your $100 bill today. But with central bank digital currency, it wouldn't be anonymous. They would be able to track where you're spending your currency and what you're spending it on. And the fourth is transferable or interoperable. They need it to work with different systems. But CBDCs would still be, even if it's distributed to a bank that's then distributed to you, it would still be just as traceable, programmable. It would be tied to your digital ID. Every transaction would still be recorded, monitored, programmed, and controlled by the major bank on behalf of the Federal Reserve. So synthetic CBDC is no protection from CBDC. And this is Christine Lagarde. She's the president of the European Central Bank. This was as of November 1 of 2023. They were in the preparation stage, and now they will finish that preparation stage in October of 2025. But when she issued this report, when the ECB issued this report on their investigation stage, which preceded the preparation stage, she signaled that there would be control. She said there would be limitations on the amount of digital euros that individuals or businesses might be able to hold in their digital wallets. She said on page 12 of the summary report, holding limits were identified as an effective tool and therefore would be included in the design of a digital euro. And these limits would prevent the accumulation or saving of digital euros if you're limited as to how much you can hold. So she's telling you that there would be control. She was prank called, and this video kind of went viral on YouTube and on the internet. She was called, she thought she was speaking to the president of Ukraine, but she was speaking to a prankster. And she said, she basically confirmed that spending, more than 1,000 euros right now is illegal in Europe. You can't spend 1,000 euros in cash. It puts you on the gray market, and you're subject to possible punishment, fines or arrest. And she said that she felt it was even dangerous to permit an individual to spend 300 or 400 euros in total anonymity. And the reason why she says this is because of terrorism, because terrorists use cash, so they can't really track them, and therefore no one should have the right to use cash. That was basically her remarks. So what we have now in the US, the FedNow came out with the FedNow system. This is an instant payment system, an instant way to transfer money instantly, that's being sponsored and hosted by the Fed, basically. Their FedNow service allows banks to participate and then offer instant transfer, instant payment services to their clients. This was launched in July of 2023, and as of August 4th, there were 1,434 banks and financial institutions participating, with 36 liquidity providers and 40 service providers. When they announced FedNow in July of 2023, they said they wanted 10,000 financial institutions to participate. And they're way behind on that. Like, there has not been much participation in FedNow since they launched 2 years ago. They only have 1,400, and they wanted 10,000. So that's interesting. I find it interesting that they're kind of, slow in adoption of this FedNow service. But Powell keeps saying, we're nowhere near adopting a CBDC. We're not even thinking about it. He said again at the U.S. Senate Banking Committee on March 7th of last year, we're nowhere near recommending, let alone adopting, a central bank digital currency in any form, he says. People don't need to worry about it. But that's not true, because they have been testing a CBDC in this country, a digital dollar. Project Hamilton was a multi-year exploratory research project by the Boston Fed and MIT. And what they showed was that their open CBDC core processor was so successful, their tests were so successful that it could perform a magnitude greater than what we do now with normal, credit cards. Transactions would be even faster. They showed that they could do 1.84 million transactions per second with settlement in less than a second. It's like extremely successful. It's way faster than we do things now. And so not only have they been thinking about it, they've been testing it, and they developed it, and it's basically ready to go on the shelf. So, but he also testified in response to a question by Senator Loomis, do you still agree that the Federal Reserve cannot introduce a CBDC without congressional authorization? And he says yes. So the central bank won't just do this. They're waiting to be authorized by Congress to do this. And, before Trump came into office and prohibited a CBDC, the question remained whether or not there was going to be some sort of crisis that would prompt Congress to want to do this. Because we saw how quickly Congress could act if they needed to in a crisis. When the COVID-19 pandemic was announced, it only took them 2 months and 26 days to pass the PrEP Act and the CARES Act. So if there were to be a crisis, they could act very quickly. They've shown that they can move very quickly and get legislation through, which would be the permission that Jerome Powell was waiting for to launch CBDC. For the next 4 years, President Trump has prohibited a CBDC, so we don't have to worry about it for the remainder of his term in office. But there's a possibility that a future president could take that CBDC off the shelf if in response to a crisis. There was another development in 2024, the SWIFT Global Bank Messaging Network, which is a massive network. It's used by financial institutions all over the world. It connects over 11,000 banking and securities organizations. And for example, in November of 2022, it supported an average of like 44.8 million messages a day. So it's used by many banking institutions. They had a project, a CBDC project called the Sandbox Project. And in phase 2, they issued this report. And basically in their report, they said they were ready to launch within 1 to 2 years. And that was last year. They also demonstrated, which was very interesting, that their platform could accommodate different countries' CBDCs, and they could all be used together, even if they were built with different protocols on different platforms. They could still accommodate that. And, other countries and everything, they could still send messages through the SWIFT network with different CBDCs that are built differently. So that was quite a development as well. The Bank of International Settlements did a survey in 2023, and 86 central banks replied, representing 94% of global economic output. And they responded to various questions during the survey of what they preferred in a CBDC. About half of them wanted to see an obligation for merchants to accept it, indicating, control. And other things that they liked were more than half wanted limits on balances. Half of emerging market developing economies wanted limitations on transactions, and some wanted embedded capital flow management measures. Still, more than half wanted programmable payments, and some wanted programmable money. So this was in response to their survey. So many of these central banks do like this control aspect, and that's basically what the survey represents. Catherine Austin Fitts spoke at Hillsdale College in November 11th of 2024 about CBDCs, and here are the things that she said. And she is a great financial expert. She's an investment banker. She used to be the assistant director for housing and development, I think, under George Bush, the first George Bush. And she basically said that we don't have a financial problem. We have a secret governance system that is not transparent and is centralized and controlled. We're seeing new and potentially wonderful digital technology used to centralize control in area after area in all aspects of our life. She said the problem is not so much with the tools themselves, but with the secret governance system and how they decide to use it. She says, I believe there's only one way to stop the move to total central control, and that's by preventing control of our digital transactions or our financial transactions. And what she's saying is that she encourages people to use cash as much as possible to sort of frustrate them in their progress towards a digital programmable currency. The more you use cash, the harder it is to take it away from you, is basically her point. And she said the ongoing direct reset, the World Economic Forum calls the greater reset. This is a completely different reset than what we've ever seen, and that's because an all-digital technology, an all-digital monetary system gives you the ability to do something very radical. And she noted that Biden's nominee for control of the currency, who didn't get passed, she had published in the Vanderbilt Law Review about central bank digital currency and inflation. And she said the wonderful thing about central bank digital currency is inflation is no longer a problem. If you have inflation, you just freeze everybody's bank accounts. So fortunately, she didn't make it, but, in the confirmation process, but, this is what they're thinking. Just freeze everybody's bank accounts, and that'll solve inflation. She said the important thing to understand about central bank digital currency is an all-digital financial system is not a currency, it's a control grid. And that's what she speaks about all the time, is that it's the all-digital system, not necessarily central bank digital currency. It's any digital currency that's programmable. It's using an all-digital system. It's only using credit cards or only using debit cards and not using cash that really, you lose control when you don't use cash. You give up that, away. You give them a way to potentially control you. She says the process to implement central bank digital currency around the world is being overseen by the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, basically like I said. The Bank of International Settlements is owned by its members. The New York Fed, the Board of Governors are both shareholders in the BIS. 63 of the top central banks are in the BIS, and they're running a process with a major partnership with the Federal Reserve to implement CBDCs and their prototyping around the world. And that's why we see so many countries moving towards central bank digital currency and researching it and developing it, is because they're getting pressure from the Bank of International Settlements to do so, which is basically made up from the Fed and other central banks, but they're pushing this on the world. She also gave an interview about CBDCs and programmability in June of 2024, and her remarks were very interesting. She said, if you look at the people behind the central bankers who want and are pushing the CBDC system, they have no intention of being reasonable. And digital technology allows them to reset the economy and reset the governance and management system on the planet to a wholly new system. You cannot fathom where these people want to go. And I'll show you an example of that later on when I speak of more recent events. You cannot fathom where these people want to go, she warns us. And she says, let's go back to the lockdowns. If I don't want you leaving your house, it's really easy to enforce this with CBDCs. I can simply say, your money won't work. You can shop online and have it delivered, but your money won't work outside of your home. You can't buy gas, you can't buy food, you can't travel because your money won't work because it's programmed. And the reality is, with AI and software, they can manage you one person at a time. So the rules that can be applied to you are totally different than the rules that can be applied to your wife. So with a social credit system, if your wife is behaving better than you, they will custom design the controls. Ultimately, this entire system can be run from Basel, Switzerland, which can be run by Lockheed Martin and BlackRock. So this is an investment banker telling you this, not just me telling you this. So President Trump is in office now. Our Treasury Secretary now, Scott Bessent, when he was being confirmed, he also said, like Trump said during his campaign, I see no reason for the U.S. to have a central bank digital currency. And they're not going in that direction. Instead, they're going the direction of stablecoins, which are also just as programmable. They're digital, they're traceable, and I'll show you evidence of that as well. So January 23rd, 2025, Trump issued this executive order strengthening American leadership in digital financial technology, which I showed you earlier today. And it revokes the Treasury's frameworks from under Biden and revokes all guidance and policies that were inconsistent with this executive order. So anything that Biden did to promote CBDC or try to move, and Biden did have an executive order which called for agencies to examine CBDC and do research on it. Well, his executive order revokes all that. And so he's prohibiting the establishment, issuance, and circulation and use of a CBDC within the United States. Another part of the executive order says agencies are prohibited from undertaking any action to establish, issue, or promote CBDCs. But he also wants to support the reasonable growth and use of digital assets, blockchain technology, and related technologies across all sectors. And blockchain technology is not necessarily bad, but if it's controlled by a central authority, then it becomes bad. It's the control aspect and the programmability that's dangerous. And his executive order aims to protect the sovereignty of the U.S. dollar to promote the development and growth of lawful and legitimate dollar-backed stablecoins worldwide. This is stablecoins like Tether. Tether is a dollar-backed stablecoin. Circle is another dollar-backed stablecoin. And what they're looking to do, as he says in this executive order, is to prop up the U.S. dollar. If you've heard the term de-dollarization before, you may have heard on the news that other countries were dumping U.S. treasuries and trying to move away from the U.S. dollar. Well, they want to support the dollar by encouraging the development of stablecoins, because stablecoins, in order to issue a stablecoin that's worth $1, in order to be tied to the dollar, they have to have reserves to back that up. And they're buying U.S. treasuries to do it. So that's why they want to support it, because while other countries are not buying U.S. treasuries, here come the stablecoin issuers that will start buying U.S. treasuries. So they have a demand for that. They create a demand for U.S. treasuries. July 18th, just last month, President Trump signed the Genius Act into law. The Genius Act stands for Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins. It's the first major federal legislation in the United States to regulate stablecoins. It was passed by the Senate, then the House on July 17th, and then signed into law by President Trump the next day on July 18th. It establishes a comprehensive regulatory framework for U.S. dollar-backed stablecoins and stablecoin issuers, and it's designed to provide clarity on this issue in the digital asset industry. But if you go to the White House website and you look at the fact sheet for the Genius Act, there's a section called Combating Illicit Activity in Digital Assets. And through regulation and registration of stablecoin issuers, the Genius Act explicitly subjects stablecoin issuers to the Bank Secrecy Act, which obligates them to establish effective anti-money laundering measures and sanctions and compliance programs with risk assessments, sanctions list verification, and customer identification. So they're going to have to do KYC, know your customer, be able to identify you, and do all the anti-money laundering things that the banks are subject to. It also improves the Treasury Department's ability to combat illicit stablecoin activities by enhancing sanctions and money laundering enforcement capabilities. And all stablecoin issuers must possess the technical capability to seize, freeze, and burn payment stablecoins when legally required, and must comply with lawful orders to do so. That's right on the White House's website. That's right on their fact sheet about dollar-backed stablecoins and the Genius Act. The Genius Act will require all the stablecoin issuers to have the capability to seize your coin, freeze your coin, or burn payment stablecoins when the government wants them to do so, when they're legally required to do so. And they have to comply with lawful orders to do so. So this is what I've been saying. I've been saying this at prior speaking engagements, and other people have been saying this. Stable coins, people don't realize that stable coins are just as programmable, just as surveillable, and just as seizable as a CBDC. So CBDC is dangerous, but stable coins are just as dangerous as well, and probably even more so, because a CBDC is issued by the government, and we have a constitution in this country. We have a First Amendment that's supposed to be upheld. But private issuers don't have to abide by the U.S. Constitution. They could deny you rights. They could seize your coin, and they could violate your constitutional rights without any problem. And we saw that during the pandemic. It was released in the Twitter files, once Musk took over Twitter and released all the Twitter files, that the White House under Biden was directly telling the social media companies to censor certain types of speech and not let, and we saw massive censorship during the pandemic. We're still seeing it on some platforms. We don't, so in this way, like the White House did with the social media companies censoring speech, we could see the White House or the government or the central bank telling the stablecoin issuers to restrict your spending habit, which is basically, the way you spend money is an expression of your speech, essentially. And they could restrict your spending according to lawful orders to do so. If there was an executive order mandating worship on a certain day, and you're violating that, the government could order the stablecoin issuer to freeze your coin. And the Tether is the biggest stablecoin issuer right now. They have, they're like a 1.65 billion market cap or something like that, 400 million users worldwide. And this is what the CEO of Tether had said. This was when they were being investigated by Congress, stablecoin issuers were. He said, with Tether, every action is online, every action is traceable, every asset can be seized, and every criminal can be caught. So if they deemed your activity to be criminal, they could seize your coin. This is the control that stablecoin issuers have over the stablecoins that they issue. So it's not like Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, a digital currency that you can buy and you can self-custody it on a little device, on a digital wallet that you plug into your computer. And you don't have to go through an exchange. You can exchange it peer-to-peer, person to person, without getting an exchange involved. With stablecoins, you have to go through their platform. So they could really control whether or not you can spend that stablecoin or whether your stablecoin should be seized. They don't have that with Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, you can hold Bitcoin and no one can really take that away from you unless you give them your digital wallet or your seed words, your passphrases and all that sort of thing. Our U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, he said at a Bitcoin conference last year, Tether will seize any amount of coin in illicit activity. So he confirmed what the CEO of Tether had said when he was speaking at a Bitcoin conference last year. So this shows the type of control that they have with these stablecoins over you. It's just as much control as a central bank would have over CBDC over you. President Trump's bill establishes the regulatory framework. Under the bill, only permitted issuers could issue a payment stablecoin for use by U.S. persons. So they're not only controlling how they would relate to their customers as far as complying with anti-money laundering. The bill determines who can actually be a stablecoin issuer, and also requires stablecoin issuers to maintain reserves on a one-to-one basis. So they need to buy U.S. treasuries in order to do that. This is how the government is trying to support the U.S. dollar. By requiring these reserves, Tether and stablecoin issuers like that have to buy more U.S. treasuries, which supports the U.S. dollar. The effective date of the act would be the earlier of two dates, either 18 months after the date of enactment of the act, which was actually 7/18/27, or 120 days after the primary federal payment stablecoin regulators issue regulations about the act. Also, like I said, with the anti-money laundering laws, the Secretary of the Treasury is going to seek public comment to identify innovative or novel methods, techniques, or strategies to detect illicit activities such as money laundering involving digital assets. And within 3 years after the enforcement of the act, FinCEN, the Financial Enforcement Network, will have to issue public guidance related to innovative methods to detect illicit activity, money laundering involving digital assets, essentially. So they defined a payment stablecoin as a digital asset. It's a digital representation of value that is recorded on a cryptographically secured digital ledger that's used or designed as a means of payment or settlement rather than investment, and it can be exchanged or redeemed in the future for a stable fixed amount of monetary value of national currency or deposit. So they also define digital asset service provider. It's any entity that for compensation or profit transacts or is a custodian of digital assets, including payment stablecoins. And the SEC and CFTC will not be regulating stablecoins. They have other organizations in the federal government that will be regulating stablecoins, but they won't be considered securities that the SEC or the CFTC will regulate. Proponents of stablecoins argue that it has many benefits. With stablecoins, businesses and consumers can transact in a cheaper and faster manner with less counterparty and foreign exchange risk. I don't think there's less counterparty risk, but it definitely provides faster settlement and cheaper transactions. And these are the benefits that they say why we should have stablecoins and why we should use stablecoins. So I get a lot of people asking me, what are you talking about? Like, what is all this stuff? It's very technical. I know. It's hard to wrap your mind around if you're not in the technology and not familiar with the technology. I mean, I have trouble sometimes becoming familiar with this technology and reading about it and trying to wrap my head around some of these technological things. But people want to know what this stuff is. They don't, so what is a blockchain? So when they talk about things being tokenized on a blockchain is a decentralized digital ledger that securely stores records across a network of computers in a way that is transparent, immutable, and resistant to tampering. So each block in the chain contains data, a timestamp, a cryptographic hash of the previous block, which forms a chain where additional block links the ones before it. So every block is linked to the one before it. So it's very difficult to falsify the transactions. They're immutable, they're traceable, they're not easily changed, because then you would have to change the blocks around it. So this makes a blockchain resistant to alteration, because changing any block would require changing all the other blocks and obtaining network consensus to accept these changes. So that's one of the benefits of blockchain. But a blockchain only has these benefits if it's decentralized. If a blockchain is just centralized with one authority, it's really just a database at that point. It doesn't act as a true blockchain. So if it's centralized with one authority, there's that danger that they could change things and they could manipulate as they want to, because it's just a centralized database. So what's a stablecoin? So a stablecoin is a digital asset. It's a type of cryptocurrency that's designed to maintain stable value relative to a specific asset. So where cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, XRP, Solana, those values go up and down like all the time. They fluctuate wildly. A stablecoin is not supposed to do that. It's supposed to just be pegged to the value of something so that it doesn't fluctuate, so you can transact with it and buy other digital assets. Some stablecoins are tied to oil, the price of oil. Some are tied to the price of gold. Some are tied to most are tied to the price of the US dollar. But it can be tied to any specific asset or a basket of assets. So President Trump, I have to speak about the developments with President Trump. And when I speak about these things, I'm not being political. I'm not making or saying an opinion of Trump either way. I'm just showing you the things that he's doing in the light of Bible prophecy, because I feel like it's necessary to know these things and see how it's fitting in with Bible prophecy. He's doing a lot of things right now that's advancing these digital programmable currencies. So when I say these things, I'm not promoting Trump or attacking Trump. Please don't take any of my comments as political. It's really not political the way I'm looking at it. I'm just looking at what's going on with the financial system. The financial system is not political. So on March 2nd, 2025, President Trump talked about having a private crypto reserve, and he named the cryptocurrencies Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, that he wanted to be included in a strategic crypto reserve for the United States. And he's demonstrated he's going all in on digital assets. And Scott Bessent has said that as well, the Treasury Secretary. He said in a Bloomberg interview, we're going big on digital assets. So Trump administration has digital assets our priority. Past administrations starved and almost made extinct a lot of these companies and pushed it offshore. So what we want to do is apply the highest regulatory and AML standards to digital assets, especially stablecoins. So he was signaling that they were going to do this with the Genius Act, applying high anti-money laundering standards to digital assets and regulating them so that they can have that control over who issues them, what type of reserves have to be maintained as well, and who can use them. If you're caught up in illicit schemes and money laundering, anything like that, your coin's going to be seized. Or anything that the government deems to be illicit or illegal, the government will be seizing your coin, is basically what he's telling you. And also, he also commented on this movement to support the U.S. dollar through dollar-backed stablecoins by requiring them to buy U.S. Treasuries. They don't require them to buy U.S. Treasuries, but they do it because it's the easiest way for them to maintain their reserves. And Scott Bessent said, I've seen estimates that just over the short term, stablecoins could create $2 trillion of demand for U.S. Treasuries and Treasury bills. And it's only at about $300 billion right now, so he's talking about creating $2 trillion of demand for U.S. Treasuries. So they're really looking at stablecoins and stablecoin issuers to save the U.S. dollar. Where other countries are dumping U.S. Treasuries, this is creating a new buyer for U.S. Treasuries. Tether, on their website, they have a transparency page where they show their reserves, and they show that about 90% of their reserves, or 81% of their reserves are U.S. Treasuries. That's massive. So and right now they're about the 4th largest purchaser of U.S. Treasuries and the 18th largest holder of U.S. Treasuries. So they're really going in on stablecoins so that they can save the U.S. dollar and not, have it fall. President Trump has said many times that if we were to lose our reserve status in the world, if the dollar lost its reserve status, that would be the equivalent of losing a world war. So he's not going to let that happen. He's going all in on digital assets to do that. In recent interviews, Whitney Webb, Mark Goodwin, they've all said that stablecoins are just as programmable, surveillable, and seizable as CBDCs are. And they said that I think those are a threat to our financial privacy and ultimately our financial freedom. It bears repeating what the Tether CEO said. With Tether, every action is online, every action is traceable, every asset can be seized, and every criminal can be caught. So this goes back to, again, what Catherine Austin Fitts was saying. It's this all digital system. Really, you lose control over everything, and you're subject to someone else's control. That's the danger of the all digital system. So let's talk about tokenization now. So where CBDCs and stablecoins, that's really your money. Tokenization is everything else. And I spoke about that this morning very briefly. It's important to note that tokenization poses the same risks that CBDCs pose with respect to control. They're not private, they're programmable, and they take from you what control you think you might have over your asset and transfer it to the entity that controls the programmable ledger that holds the digital token. That's important to understand about tokenization. Where you have an asset and you want to control that asset directly, if you tokenize it, you're putting an intermediary between you and the asset. So whoever controls the platform, you've given them control over your asset, in a sense. It's important to understand that. There's this gentleman, Edward Dowd. He's an investment executive and founding partner of Finance Technologies, and he's been speaking out about this as well. And specifically with respect to tokenization, he says, we're sleepwalking towards the biggest asset grab in the history of the planet. He says they're trying to destroy farms, land, and businesses, freedoms, housing, individual wealth, travel, and own them or sell them off to the highest bidder. And at the same time, they're trying to ring-fence society into the entrapment of being controlled by data either through health passports or the slow mission creep towards central bank digital currencies. He said, it's a giant asset grab of what we own and control. They frame this all in being in our best interests, but it's the biggest swindle ever. And this gargantuan virtue contract comes with a huge slice of authoritarianism. So this is another investment guy, a hedge fund guy, telling us what he sees with respect to tokenization, CBDCs, and this move towards digital control of everything. So it's important to note. On the other side, the advocates claim that tokenization on blockchains offers benefits like increased liquidity, accessibility for investors, reduced counterparty risks, enhanced transparency, lower transaction costs, and there's also a move to tokenize real-world assets, converting tangible assets into digital tokens using blockchain technology. Proponents say that this enhances liquidity and transparency and accessibility, but really it's putting another party in the path of control between you and your asset. Things that are being tokenized include financial assets like stocks and bonds and equities, as well as real estate, art, commodities, and intellectual property. All these things are being tokenized on a blockchain ledger. And I showed this slide earlier this morning. The Boston Consulting Group estimates that 16 trillion could be tokenized by 2030, but other people have said it's even more than that could be tokenized by 2030, like 35 trillion. 30 to 35 trillion are estimates that other experts have raised with respect to that. And this author, I showed you this morning, this author states that tokenization is real, it's the new rails of finance, and any asset that can be tokenized eventually will be. In his article, he says, industry insiders are painting a clear picture that tokenization, with its potential to streamline regulated asset transfer significantly, it isn't a pipe dream, but it's the future of financial markets. So this is where everything's going. They're tokenizing equities. Investopedia defines a tokenized equity as a digital token or coin that represents shares in a corporation or organization. So when you buy an equity, you buy a stock, you're buying a share in that company. If it's tokenized on a blockchain, then it's a tokenized equity. Over $1 billion in treasury notes have been tokenized on public blockchains, and these are digital representations of US government bonds that can be traded as tokens on a blockchain. When you think about it, because stablecoin issuers, dollar-backed stablecoin issuers, they're using treasuries to support them in the reserves. They're buying US treasuries to support their reserves. That's really, you're basically buying a tokenized treasury at that point because it's the treasury that's backing up the stablecoin. In this article from CoinDesk, the market value of treasury notes tokenized through blockchains like Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, Stellar, and others has crossed above 1 billion, and it's risen nearly tenfold since January 2023. So this is ongoing. They're just tokenizing more and more assets, a lot of these firms. BlackRock, Larry Fink of BlackRock, he's been a big advocate for tokenization, and he believes it to be the future of financial markets as well. He said that it's the next generation for markets, tokenization of securities. And they created a fund called the BUIDL, the Build Fund. And they also invested in a company called Securitize that tokenizes assets. And in the Coinbase article, they stated BlackRock is to start a new real-world asset tokenization fund, BUIDL, on the Ethereum network. The asset management giant also made investments in that asset tokenization company called Securitize. So that company goes and tokenizes assets for clients and for BlackRock. And this is the latest progression of our digital asset strategy, said BlackRock. They're focused on developing solutions in the digital asset space that help solve real problems for their clients. So what does it mean to tokenize real-world assets? So it's anything like metals, art, homes, your car, all these things they're looking to tokenize on public blockchains. And this was in the plan for the Bank of International Settlements to include all of these tokenized assets on a global unified ledger. And from this article, it says the core idea of real-world asset tokenization is basically to create a virtual investment vehicle on the blockchain linked to tangible things like real estate, precious metals, arts, and collectibles. So instead of the deed to a house being a physical piece of paper, the ownership is put on a blockchain. This could be traded between two parties directly or fractionalized and offered for many people to buy. So, you know, people ask, why would we do this? Like, why would anybody want to tokenize or see the benefits of tokenizing their property? It also would be very convenient. Like, it offers them a lot of convenience, and that's why people are attracted to it. Because right now, if you try to sell your house, it's a pretty involved process, and it can take like a month to close, you know, if it's fast. You know, you can close in a month. With this, as soon as the money hits a bank account, a smart contract could execute, and the asset is transferred to someone else. It could be that simple. It could be instantaneous. So obviously, it would be convenient to a lot of people. But unfortunately, the danger is if you're tokenizing on someone else's platform that's programmable, you're giving up that control over your asset. So with this convenience, you're giving up a ton of control. And they say it lowers the costs of ownership and lowers the cost of transfer by removing lawyers and bankers and brokers. You don't need them anymore. You can just, I want to sell my house to you. Okay, give me the money. Boom, you're done. You don't need a lawyer for that. It allows fast, efficient trading of items, lowers the barrier to entry, creates more liquidity, and it's transparent. So, JP Morgan has been heavily involved in tokenization for years. They've been working on tokenization and digital assets for the past 6 years, actually. And they have an Onyx digital assets platform, which was originally called Onyx, and recently it's been renamed to Connexus. But in their digital assets platform, they started tokenizing corporate deposits. They have a tokenized collateral network. But in their pipeline, they have digital debt services they want to tokenize, investment fund tokenization, digital FX tokenization, and then at the end of the pipeline here, they have carbon credits. Why would you do that? Unless you're signaling that we could be moving towards a social credit system involving carbon credits. That's apparently what they're anticipating. As of May of last year, they had processed over 1.2 trillion of notional trade volume on Onyx. And then as of November of last year, CoinDesk reported that they had executed over 1.5 trillion in transactions on their digital assets platform. So it's developing, it's moving forward, and they're trying to tokenize as many assets as widely as they can on their platform as they develop it. And this was November 2024 when they rebranded it to Connexus. They call it Connexus Digital Assets. And it's a blockchain-based platform. It includes intraday repo, tokenized collateral, and bond issuance. And they're promoting it as the benefit of being able to settle instantly rather than a one-day settlement. So again, they're going forward with this convenience factor to sell it. Another trend, another movement is tokenization of natural assets. So that's like hectares of land, and that concept leverages blockchain technology to convert ownership rights into digital tokens. Advocates claim that this enables the creation of a secure, transparent, and tradable market for natural resources such as forest, water rights, and minerals. So they're looking to tokenize things in nature in the real world. It's called a regenerative finance-based refi, and it involves tokenizing natural assets to create economic incentives for preserving ecosystems and combating environmental degradation. That's what they say that the point of all of this is. They say it will incentivize conservation, provide transparency and security, and scalability. One of the companies that's involved in this is a European company called Bricken. They have revolutionized the tokenization of real-world assets through their digital asset platform. It supports both crypto and fiat currencies, and it offers business a solution to digitalize their assets seamlessly. They have like a plug-and-play platform that simplifies the digital asset life cycle from creation to management, according to their website. And so they say on their website, natural real-world assets such as land can be tokenized with their platform. They provide the technology and infrastructure for clients, such as real estate developers, to tokenize real-world assets, including land, by creating programmable digital tokens on their blockchain. The clients themselves tokenize their own assets. It's not Bricken going out and tokenizing them for them, but it involves converting ownership rights of physical assets into digital tokens that are tradable on their blockchain network. So that's how that works, and that's what they're involved in. So let's talk again about the Bank of International Settlements plan to tokenize all assets on a global unified ledger. And like I mentioned this morning, this came out of their annual report that was issued on June 20th of 2023. And their chapter was titled Blueprint for the Future Monetary System, Improving the Old and Enabling the New. So this is their plan to change the future monetary system, is tokenizing all assets on a global unified ledger. Each token would be coded with rules as to what the asset can and can't do, smart contracts, information about what the asset is, where it comes from, who owns it. And the Bank of International Settlements report describes that in a tokenized setting, money or assets, anything that you tokenize on their platform, becomes an executable object. And the platform itself is programmable, as I stated earlier. And the danger of this programmable platform is in part the data environment that they have on there, because they say that it would include all information necessary to incorporate real-world events into contingent performance of actions. So anything that happens in real life that they deem, if they were deemed that to be illicit or illegal, that could potentially impact your ownership of the asset, is basically what they're telling you. Every piece of information from real-world events that could possibly impact the assets or transactions could impact them on the global unified ledger. So where would they get this data? We hold on to these surveillance devices all the time in our hands, the cell phone. There's a lot of surveillance that they get from us on the cell phone. So, when I think about, well, how does this happen? How would they track you down? Where do they get this data as to where you are, what you're doing? They can get it from social media posts, but they can also get it from your cell phone. If you have an opportunity to go to this guy's YouTube page, Rob Braxman Tech, he sells de-Googled phones and private networks like VPNs. He has a VPN service that's private and everything, but he puts out these videos on how your cell phone spies on you and how you can evade some of the phone surveillance in emergencies. And one of the things he talks about is there's, after 9/11 with the Patriot Act, the NSA began the PRISM program. And the PRISM program captures anything that's over the telephone network. Like all speech is basically wiretapped. There were whistleblowers like Edward Snowden came out and talked about that. It's all part of the PRISM program. So all communications on your cell phone are basically wiretapped, you can assume. And all text messages as well come within that, the PRISM program. And it's collected, this data is collected, and the government has access to it. It's also collected by your phone carrier. The phone carrier collects all this data. He also talks about the newest development in this technology is AI agents. So an AI agent is like Apple Intelligence or Google Gemini or Microsoft Copilot. The actual slogan for Microsoft Copilot, which he talks about, is the AI agent is designed to see what you see, to hear what you hear, and to know what you know. So it's designed to spy on you. It's designed to hear these things for you. And they advertise it as a personal assistant, like this is your new friend, your new personal assistant who can help you with things. But he's also spying on you, and all that data is going back to your carrier, or going back to Google or Apple. So we get we're surveilled constantly by our cell phones. And that's important to realize. That's where they could get this data for this data environment on the Bank of International Settlements Global Unified Ledger. Catherine Austin Fitz was talking for Solari, her Solari report, and this video came out, and it was titled, CBDC or Stablecoins, the Sinister Plot is the Same. And she talked about the Bank of International Settlements plan to tokenize all assets on a global unified ledger. And she said, quote, I just spent some time looking at the BIS website, looking at their vision of literally creating a token on every asset on the planet and integrating that with the digital monetary system. She said, which of course I know could be integrated with the social credit system. So it's sort of CBDC, but much worse because all of your assets are integrated in. She says, and that makes it easier to liquefy your assets, which could be good or bad, but it also means that it subjects your assets to a social credit system. So it's basically a complete control grid. So this is an investment banker telling us this. She says, I can see all sorts of very positive use for asset tokenization, but if you look at asset tokenization in the hands of the people that want central control, it's absolutely frightening to me, she says. To me, the danger is an all-digital system with a high-quality digital ID, and then you're on another planet in terms of control. So this is an investment banker telling us this. Not just me saying this. And if you remember that slogan from the World Economic Forum, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. It's 2030, you own nothing and you'll be happy. This is how they can accomplish that. CBDC, tokenization of all your assets. This is how you can own nothing and be happy. There's also a documentary that I was telling some people about during lunch. It's called The Great Taking by David Rogers Webb. And he's a former hedge fund guy. And he did this documentary showing how each state has a uniform commercial code. All the states have it, and they vote different things in and out of it. But in every state's uniform commercial code, where you think you own a security, like say you buy stocks, you think you own it outright. You don't actually own it outright. You have an ownership interest in that. According to the UCC in all the states UCCs has been changed to include this. So you have an ownership interest in this stock or this bond that you bought. And if there were to be an economic collapse, if a massive stock market collapse or the major companies in the stock market collapse because their earnings are just out of control and they misreport something, and somehow it triggers the collapse of the stock market. That's what he was thinking, that these companies were overvalued, the stock market was overvalued. His theory was at some point there would be a collapse based on that. Really, it could be triggered by anything. There could be some cyber terrorist attack that could trigger a collapse. You don't know what it's going to be. But he was saying that if there is a collapse, because the derivatives market is so much bigger than the collateral that's supporting the derivatives market, all of your assets in your 401k just could be taken instantly if there were such a collapse. So his documentary is worth watching. It's very interesting. It's called The Great Taking on thegreattaking.com. It's on YouTube, it's on Rumble, and he has a PDF that goes along with it that has citations for everything. So it's very well researched and it's worth looking at. What I want to talk about next is how AI fits into this. So Trump has some new projects, and one of them he announced, Project Stargate. He announced it on, I think the first full day he had in office, January 21st of 2025. I'm not trying to, beat up Trump or anything, but he's doing a lot of stuff. And I just have to talk about it because it just falls into this whole, it can be used as part of the architecture to, enforce Satan's no buy, no sell policy. But so he announced a massive infrastructure investment. It's a joint venture between OpenAI, SoftBank, Microsoft, and Oracle. And it's a large-scale AI initiative. $500 billion is being allocated for its development. And it's going to involve technology and artificial intelligence, all made in the United States. It's going to need a lot of electricity, so they have energy generation plants. And this is Trump's comment. Immediately, Stargate will be building the physical and virtual infrastructure to power the next generation of advancements in AI. This will include the construction of colossal data centers, very, very massive structures, and physical campuses and locations being scouted nationwide. And he said, I'm going to help a lot with emergency declarations because we have an emergency. We have to get this stuff built. Is it really an emergency? No, I don't think it's an emergency. I don't see what the emergency is. Why do we have to have these colossal data centers for AI to pour over all this data? I don't see that as an emergency. But he says, I think it's going to be something that's very special. It will lead to something that could be the biggest of all, he says. Those are his words exactly. Larry Ellison, the CEO and Oracle founder, was there at the announcement, and he's contributing to this as well. His company is contributing to this as well. And he said at this same announcement, the data centers are actually under construction. The first of them are under construction in Texas. Each building is 500,000 square feet. There are 10 buildings currently being built, but that will extend to 20, and more will be built in other locations. So they're looking for these massive, colossal AI data centers everywhere. And he also said, the kinds of applications that we are building is electronic health records, not just maintaining electronic health records, but by looking at electronic health records, understanding the condition better than the doctors, understanding conditions of their patients, and being able to provide health care plans that are much better than they otherwise would be. I don't need AI recommending healthcare treatments for me. I don't know about you. I don't know how you feel about that. But I don't want AI looking over any of my medical records and recommending the next procedure I should take. I don't need any procedures. But AI thinks it knows better than we know. So this is just one application that they're telling you about. If they're looking at your health records, what other records are they going to look at? Your social media posts, your bank records, your financial records? These are colossal, massive data centers. 500,000 square feet. It's just, it's crazy. So that's what they're doing. The SoftBank CEO, he's also involved in this, and also said that NVIDIA and MGX would also be partners. And he said, this will help people's life. This will help solve many, many issues, difficult things that otherwise we could not have solved with the power of AI. Artificial superintelligence will come to solve the issues that mankind will never have thought we could solve. Yeah, right. I don't think so. I don't think so. AI is not good. AI is very faulty at times. AI makes a lot of mistakes. I certainly don't think it's a superintelligence that's going to be doing everything for us, but it's also interesting to note that Stargate is a name of an old CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency program that was transferred to the CIA. And it's on the CIA's website, the Stargate thing. But I'm sure that's probably nothing. And just so you get an idea of who this guy is, this Larry Ellison guy from Oracle, these are comments that he made in September 2024 at an investor meeting that he had, financial analyst meeting on September 12th, 2024. He said that AI he basically said AI would play a role in monitoring society through a vast network of interconnected cameras. This system would include security cameras, police body cams, and vehicle dash cams. And it's really frightening what this guy has to say and what he thinks about AI. And he's involved in the construction of all these data centers that Trump announced. He said AI will enable a vast surveillance system that can monitor systems. And it's been aggressively pursuing AI projects. And he said citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on, Ellison said. Oh, back. He said he envisioned a future where AI analyzes real-time data from this network of police body cameras, vehicle cameras, and security cameras to prevent crime and influence public behavior for a safer society. He says, we're going to have supervision. Every police officer is going to be supervised at all times, and if there's a problem, AI will report that problem and report it to the appropriate person. He also said that there should really be no police chases. In the same talk where he was talking about these things, he said there should be no police chases. There should be no high-speed police chases. A drone should be dispatched whenever AI thinks there's a problem. Just dispatch a drone right away to the situation. He says, he also went on to say, we actually take the video that the police officer is, and the camera is always on. You don't turn it on and off. And by the way, if you have to go to the bathroom, say, Oracle, I need 2 minutes to take a bathroom break, and we'll turn it off. And then he said, the truth is we don't really turn it off. What we do is we record it so no one can see it, and no one can get into that recording without a court order. So you get the privacy you requested, but a judge can order, I want to look at this so-called bathroom break. This is the guy who's involved in the construction of these colossal AI data centers. This is his vision for the future. Just saying. And of course, Scott Bessent said, because of this AI boom, we're becoming the AI superpower of the world. That's the vision of this administration. On July 15th, just recently, Trump was at a Pennsylvania Energy and Innovation Summit, and there this is from the White House website, President Trump solidifies U.S. position as a leader in AI, and President Trump is making America the undisputed world leader in artificial intelligence, and today marked a massive leap forward with the announcement of over $90 billion, it was actually $92 billion, in groundbreaking AI and energy investments in Pennsylvania. He basically announced that Pennsylvania is going to be a next location for these data centers. They're doing data centers in Pennsylvania. He was joined by leaders of the nation's premier tech and energy giants, administration officials, and lawmakers, and he showcased investments at the summit. It covered billions of dollars in AI and energy investment, including Google's providing $25 billion, Blackstone's providing $25 billion, and CoreWeave is providing $6 million in data center expansion. And Trump also, this was another announcement from the website from the day before, that it was $92 billion total that was committed to this cutting-edge AI initiative. The CoreWeave CEO had stated at this event, we're extremely excited about the role that this data center is going to play in our plans to be able to support not just the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but the broader Mid-Atlantic region for us. And your support has been incredible. You know, he's saying this to President Trump, has been incredible across the energy space that's required to deliver clean, reliable power, as well as your support for our artificial intelligence at large. So this is a data center that's going to be built in Pennsylvania. So they got the 10 in Texas, that's going to be another 20, they were going to increase to 20, and now they're doing one in Pennsylvania. When Larry Ellison was talking at that investor analyst thing, he envisioned having data centers all over the world, in every country, in every city, these data centers for AI. So this is how they're acting on this vision in the next direction. But my issue with them is that AI really is not good. It really can't be trusted. So the fact that they're putting this AI in charge of everything is really quite problematic in my opinion. The Bank of International Settlements issued an annual report in 2024. And in this report, they talked about AI. And so this is not coming from me. You know, people think I'm just down on technology and, you know, I don't want to see progress, whatever. AI has problems. It's problematic. From the annual report, of course, there's substantial uncertainty about the long-term capabilities of generative AI. Current LLMs can fail elementary logical reasoning tasks and struggle with counterfactual reasoning, as illustrated in recent Bank of International Settlements work, because they've been studying this. For example, when posed with a logical puzzle that demands reasoning about the knowledge of others and about counterfactuals, LLMs display a distinctive pattern of failure. They perform flawlessly when presented with the original wording of a puzzle, which they have likely seen during their training. They falter when the same problem is presented with small changes of innocuous details such as names and dates, suggesting a lack of true understanding of the underlying logic of statements. Their report also said about large language models, current LLMs do not know what they do not know. They also suffer from the hallucination problem. They can present a factually incorrect answer as if it were correct, and even invent secondary sources to back up their fake claims. Unfortunately, hallucinations are a feature rather than a bug in these models. LLMs hallucinate because they're trained to predict statistically plausible word based on some input, but they can't distinguish what is linguistically probable from what is factually correct. So it's very problematic, the use of these generative AI and large language models. Other research has confirmed this as well. In this journal, 50 Patterns, they had a study on AI deception, a survey of examples, risks, and potential solutions. And I quote from their report, and they basically said, AI systems are already capable of deceiving humans. Deception is a systematic inducement of false beliefs and others can accomplish some outcome rather than the truth. Large language models and other AI systems have already learned from their training the ability to deceive via techniques such as manipulation, sycophancy, and cheating the safety test. AI's increasing capabilities at deception pose serious risks, ranging from short-term risks such as fraud and election tampering to long-term risks such as losing control of AI systems. They note that, rightfully so, that proactive solutions are needed, such as regulatory frameworks to assess AI deception risks, laws requiring transparency about AI interactions, and further research into detecting and preventing AI deception. Proactively addressing the problem of AI deception is crucial, obviously, to ensure that AI acts as a beneficial technology. So this journal that, you know, all the studies are published in talking about this. AI deception, AI risks, you know, with respect to deception. It's just, they want to put this in charge of your medical records to suggest what medical procedures you should take next. So are we ready for what's coming? That's like the question that I ask. But I don't tell people this. I make a lot of fun of AI because AI is easy to make fun of. But, you know, we shouldn't be fearful about these things. Like I said earlier this morning, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and a sound mind, and he will protect us, so we don't need to be fearful about these things. There's a lot of developments going on. Things are moving pretty fast. But all this shows us is that we're living in the last days, and we need to prepare, and we need to, you know, prepare others, you know, that are unprepared. There was a coworker that I was talking to this week, in fact, and I was telling him about all of these things in AI and the colossal data centers, and I was telling him the same things that I've just shown you. And, you know, God gave me such a powerful opportunity to witness, you know? So he said to me, he was getting increasingly concerned when I'm talking about all these things. And he just stopped and he thought about it. And then he came back to me a few minutes later and he's like, do you take this in at a personal level? Like, do you ever personalize any of this? Like, does this bother you? Does any of this bother you? And I said, no, I'm not bothered by this at all. And he's like, how are you not bothered by this? So I just stopped and I said, I don't know what his denomination is. I don't know if he's a Christian or not. But I just said to him, I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. And I know Jesus loves me. And I'm not bothered by this because I know I have a relationship with Jesus. And I, have a relationship with God, a close relationship with God. And I have that daily connection with God. I'm not worried about any of this. And if you had a relationship with God too, you wouldn't be worried about this either. You need to know Jesus. And it was just a powerful moment to be able to witness to him, because that's all we need to get us through this. That's all we need to get us through this is our relationship with God. That's the most important thing. So God doesn't want us to be fearful, but we should help others. There's others out there who will be fearful, and they need help. So, and Isaiah 40:31 says, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. God's promised to take care of us, so we shouldn't be worried about any of these things, and we should show people that we're not worried about these things. Adventists should not be worried about these things, of all people. We have these prophecies. We have these truths that God has given us. None of us should be worried about these things. And if we're called upon to lose all our money or our things for God because we are following his law and worshiping him and doing his commandments and our love for him, then we're just on the right side of the great controversy. We don't want to, if we can buy and sell during the end times, there's a problem. There's a problem with your relationship with God. Let's put it that way. So none of us should be surprised by these things, and none of us should be fearful of these things. Isaiah 51:7 says, hearken unto me, ye that know righteousness, the people in whose heart is my law. Fear not the reproach of men, neither be ye afraid of their revilings. We should not be afraid of any of these things. And it's going to be interesting. I just find it fascinating, all these developments. It's just, I couldn't have imagined this when I was a kid growing up with my family. I never imagined how any of this can happen. But God's showing us, they're showing us what they're doing. And they're showing us where we're living in the stream of time. Also, Sister White says in Counsels on Stewardships, it's now that our brethren should be cutting down their possessions instead of increasing them. We are about to move to a better country, even a heavenly. Then let us not be dwellers upon the earth, but be getting things into as compact a compass as possible. And that's so true. The less you have to be attached to here, the less chance you have of being lost. Because so many people are going to be lost because they're fearful and afraid and attached to their money and their things. So many people, even Adventists, are going to be so attached to their money and their things. If you have too many things, you're just going to find it hard to let them go. You know what I'm saying? We can't be attached to our money or our things. We can't be lost, because we're attached to our money or our things. We have to be willing to let these things go because they're just tools. God just gives them to us as tools to do his work. She says in stewardship, all are entrusted with talents. The Lord has given men his goods upon which to trade. He has made them his stewards and has placed in their possession money, houses, and lands. All these are to be regarded as the Lord's goods and used to advance his work, to build up his kingdom in the world. So, that's really what we should be doing. And the Bible tells us to lay up your treasures in heaven, where moths can't, attack it and rust and steal and all that. So we really need to use our assets to do God's work. That's really what we should be doing. She also says, in trading with the Lord's goods, we are to seek him for wisdom, that we may not use his sacred goods to glorify ourselves or to indulge selfish impulses. The amount entrusted varies, but those who have the smallest gifts must not feel that because their talent or means is small, they can do nothing with it. We can all do something with everything we have, even the smallest thing, we can all be a comfort to someone else and a help to someone else who is struggling during these times or who needs to know Jesus. We all can do that. So I implore people that the time now is to awaken and prepare. So how can we prepare for these things? Number one, I think that being debt-free is going to be an advantage. If you can find a way to become debt-free, we have some time. These things aren't happening tomorrow, but they're happening slowly, and the pot is starting to boil. But, we have some time. If we can pay off our debt and be debt-free, that's less of a pain point that can be applied to you in financial hardship. But we can't fool ourselves. We are going to have to make the choice, and financial pressure is going to be brought to bear on us as to whether or not we'll take the mark of the beast and violate God's law or obey God's law and not be able to buy ourselves. So I would suggest avoiding as much as possible CBDCs, digital IDs, avoid the real ID. That's just a national ID that's designed to track you. I won't take it. And they're lying to you. They're lying to me. They're telling me, I'm seeing everywhere on the TV and everything, you're not going to be able to travel without your real ID. You can't get on a plane. Even when I travel, I was just at ASI with my sister and my mom. On my flight to ASI, in the confirmation email from JetBlue, you cannot travel without a real ID. That's a lie. It's a lie. If you go to the TSA's website, there's a whole list of documents that you can travel with to get on the plane. They're just lying to you. They just want you to get this real ID. So I did an experiment on the way to ASI. I used one of the things on the list is an enhanced driver's license from your state. I have an enhanced driver's license from New York. So I used that, and I got on fine. Nobody bothered me. Nobody asked me any questions. Here, I did another experiment. One of the things on the list is a passport, a U.S. passport, or a valid passport. So I have a valid U.S. passport. I used that. Nobody bothered me. Nobody said, where's your real ID? I got on the plane just fine. So they're lying to us about this real ID nonsense. It's just a digital ID, it's just a national ID that eventually they'll digitize. They're already trying to get you to accept a digital ID. If you know, some states have what's called mobile driver's license or mobile IDs, which is preposterous to me because your driver's license is not a tree. You take it wherever you go. It is mobile. It's already mobile. It's physical license. It's already going with you. It's already mobile. What do you mean, a mobile driver's license? But it's a driver's license on your phone that you can you see these people all the time in the airport. They have their driver's license on their phone and they put it down. And there's nothing, I don't understand why you can't carry a physical ID. It's not that much of a burden, in my opinion, but people like to be, cutting edge and, whatever. So I would avoid digital IDs, avoid real ID, avoid vaccine passports, avoid methods of payment if you can. Eventually they're trying to move from cash to a cashless society. And even Richard Warner says that. And Catherine Austin Fitts says, the danger is the all digital system. If you can use cash as much as possible, she recommends that you use cash as much as possible. So the other thing is build relationships with local farmers. I find if you have ways to get food from places other than the supermarket, you are in a better place. You have other access to food, a neighbor that you could barter with or something, or a farmer that you can barter with. Like building these relationships will help you, have a little bit more for longer. The least dependent that you can be on a supermarket, the better off you'll be. And you can grow your own garden. We can grow our own stuff and be used to providing food for us off of our own land. That's a good thing to do. One of my big passions is foraging because we're going to be in flight at some point. May your flight not be in the winter or on the Sabbath day, the Bible says. So what are you going to do? What are you going to eat? Of course God will provide for us, but can't we meet him halfway and be able to identify those wild edible plants that are growing around us that are not only nutritional but medicinal and everything, and they have medicinal properties. They can be used to relieve pain, antiseptic, antibacterial, all this stuff. There's all these great plants around us that the state is calling a noxious weed, or people call noxious weeds. And the truth is, like, many of them are very nutritious or have great medicinal properties, or both. So improving your foraging skills, getting to know those plants in your area that you can eat if you are in a food scarcity situation is very beneficial. And once you have that skill, no one can take it away from you. So I think foraging is awesome. At my church, I've taught 2 classes on foraging. And I've shown them the plants that are so common, like common weeds, dandelion and all these purslane and plantain and, all these weeds. Sorrel, wood sorrel, sheep sorrel, all these great, and so tasty. Yeah, yep. And so all these things are so tasty. And we walked, after I presented my presentation on the screen, we went around the church and we found like all these different varieties of weeds that are just growing in the lawn. We didn't let the landscaper come and cut it yet. So we have something to forage. But it was good, it was fun, and the kids loved it, and the adults loved it. I mean, there was an older lady with a walker, and she was so excited. She's like, "Can I eat this?" Like, yes, you can eat that. That's one of the ones I talked about. But yeah, everybody can get involved in this. Everybody can learn. And then you don't have to be hungry. I always say, fun fact about me, unless I'm purposefully fasting and praying, I don't like to be hungry. So if you're with me during the last days when we're in flight, we're going to have stuff to eat because I'm going to find it. I'll find it one way or another. But we shouldn't have a spirit of fear. And in the Desire of Ages, Sister White said, "But to the obedient is given the promise. He shall dwell on high. His place of defense shall be the munition of rocks. Bread shall be given him. His water shall be sure. By this promise the children of God will live. When the earth shall be wasted with famine, they shall be fed." So we have all these promises that we can rely on. We don't have to be fearful. We don't have to be fearful. Hebrews 4:16 says, "Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need." So we want to be a help to someone else, and we want to be able to help ourselves and our families as well. And, God is always there for us. God is just there for us to, speak with him, pray with him, and, pray to him and reach him, and he welcomes it. He wants to have this daily relationship with us, and we should. And that's what's really going to protect us through all this. So those are my suggestions for preparing. Hopefully it was useful. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them either here or online. No? Yes? Yeah, so the question was, do you have any suggestions about the cell phone? I would invest in a very good Faraday bag for times when you actually want privacy. A Faraday bag is like a bag that's supposed to be very secure, and it doesn't allow wireless things to come in to access it or go out, get sent out. So, and you can find these things, but they sell some fake ones on Amazon, I've heard. But you want to research it and get a good quality Faraday bag so that you can be private when you want to be private. Or because even some phones when they're turned off, they're still spying on you, by the way. Even if you take the battery out, they're still spying on you. Actually, Apple is one of the worst. And I hate to say that, break it to all the Apple people. But Apple is one of the worst because when the phone is off or something, the guy Rob Braxman Tech, he talks about it in very articulately and very good detail. The Apple phone uses Bluetooth Low Energy, BLE, when it can't send your data to Apple, it will send it to another device that it can locate on Bluetooth Low Energy to share that data so that device can send it back to Apple. So there's a lot of surveillance. You could get a de-Googled phone, like he suggests and like he sells. But even, he says, even with the de-Googled phones, there's some stuff you just can't avoid. There's some data, like location data. There's always a cell phone tower like a mile away or something that's tracking you, or something like that. So there's some data you can't protect against, but it does the most to do it. But if you're going to get a de-Googled phone, you also have to de-Google your life, which is very challenging. I would love to de-Google my life, but I'm not there yet. I'm all in Gmail and all this stuff. They're spying on me, but. Oh, wow, nice. Exactly. That's right. Not putting a chip in my body either. That's great, yeah. So, yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's true. Yes, that's true. Yeah, our lives were simpler before all these phones, that's for sure. Deb, what's your question?
I was just going to say, when we talk about cell phones, which definitely do have all of those capabilities, pictures and what we speak, those sorts of things. But smart TVs in the home do the very same thing. The computer chips in your car, that's a multi-billion-dollar industry, is selling the information that's gained from the car. It's very hard. It's not just cell phones. It is all electronics around us, whether it's our laptop computers, whether it's our, like I say, cars, whether it's our smart TVs, whether it's any number, the Alexa that people will have in their homes, and smart lights and all of these kinds of things. So that's where people have to think, is even beyond the cell phone.
Yeah, you're right. All of these electronic devices, the smart TVs and everything, in the smart TVs, in their terms and conditions, you actually give them permission to film you in your home and take pictures. That you're just giving them that permission in the terms and conditions. So, yeah, in the bedroom. I know. Yeah, we should separate from these things for sure. Yes, your question?
Yeah, you talked earlier about some of the things we should not have, and you mentioned the real ID. But I find that one hard to get away from because, for instance, we moved from Florida to South Carolina, and one of the first things we had to do was to get our driver's license and IDs replaced. And what did I get? A real ID. I didn't have it last year, but I got a real ID this year.
I don't think you have to get a real ID. There's a lady who, her name is Twyla Braze, and she is for Health Freedom. She's on some council for Health Freedom or something like that. And she's been giving interviews lately on different podcasts. And she says you don't have to have a real ID, and if you have one, give it up. They're just trying to get everybody into it so they can coerce everyone else to get into it. You know what I'm saying? Well, I think in some states you can get it without the real ID part of it. You can just get the enhanced driver's license instead of the real ID with the star on it.
But they don't give you the option, though.
They don't give you the option?
No, when we went in, they took our Florida license and they just give you that one. They don't give you a form that gives you a box to tick, real ID or enhanced. They just give you the real ID.
Really? I mean, I haven't checked with state of New York or state of New Jersey yet because my driver's license isn't up yet. I only have the enhanced and it's not due yet. But it's a possibility that they're forcing you. I don't know. But she said that you have a choice. I don't know.
And I think it's both because I'm military. I'm a retired military, so I have military ID. And when I turned 65, I had to get all my IDs and everything switched over. Well, when I went to the DMV, they wanted to, they told me about the real ID, but they couldn't do it because there was some technicalities that they could not switch my ID over to a real ID. But then she said, well, don't worry about it because you have your passport and you have your military ID, so you're good. When my husband went, he's military also, and he has military ID, but he just went on ahead and got it anyway. But she did say, in the end, she said, well, don't worry about it. You have enough to cover you. So I think I agree with them. When you move here, you ought, or move anywhere, I guess, and you have to switch over your ID to the new state, it's like automatic. But the only reason they didn't switch mine is because they couldn't. And so then she was like, oh, well, you'll be fine. But, I escaped.
Yes, Judy?
Well, you said that if you had a real ID, how do you get rid of it?
Well, that was her suggestion. I haven't gone on her website because she's got a lot of information on her website. I just happened to hear her say it in a podcast. It was her advice, if you have a real ID, get rid of it. Give it up. So she seems to think that there is a choice between the regular ID and the real ID, but I have not been to the DMV to ascertain if this is the case in my state or, I don't know about other states either.
Okay. But my real question was, we know that with the internet, there's hackers all the time. And then there's, I forget what it's called, when they go into certain companies and rob them of their files and stuff, and they what is it called? Hackers. Okay. How do they stop that? I mean, they hack into a system, and they could ruin it for a lot of people. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, even businesses that have, they don't have security systems that are quite up to date or things so encrypted that as they should be, they can be hacked as well and your information can be lost. We all take that risk when we do things on the internet or do things digitally. We take that risk that we're going to be hacked. And the same thing can happen with CBDC. I mean, they could hack, cryptocurrency. They could hack CBDC. That's countries that get involved in issuing a CBDC, they have to have really super security to make sure that that's safe. So.
I don't really know how to ask this. In your professional opinion, what you do for a living, as far as the people who are behind this currency and the people who want this pushed, I mean, the end time result for us Adventists is obviously Sunday legislation, and that's the end goal for us. Do you think these people are consciously striving for that mark, or do you think they are subconsciously being moved by Satan, as it's been labeled Satan's plan? I mean, do you think it's, I don't know if I'm wording it right, but do you think they're making a conscious effort with this no buy, no sell to enforce the first day of the week? Or do you think it's just, it's better for the economy, or both, or what?
I think that the people who are in the highest positions of power, they definitely have to be consciously, intentionally doing this. You know, I don't have, you know, the knowledge or experience that other people have with secret societies like Walter Veith, or even, I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Gabriel Estevao. He is a guy, he's been on Belt of Truth Ministries, just an interview with him. He has a book out, Rescued from the Kingdom of Darkness. He was from, I think it was Angola, and he was raised from birth. He didn't have a choice in this matter. He was raised from birth as a Satanist, and he believed his father was Satan. Like, Satan would show up and put him on his knee and say, "Hey, son, how you doing?" You know, all this stuff like that. So he didn't know, and he was a Satanist, and he was involved in all these things, and he talks about the secret societies in his book. And the people who are at the top, like, they definitely know they're worshiping Satan, and they're working for Satan. The people at the top know this in the highest positions of power. He says that in his book, and coming from an ex-Satanist, I kind of believe him, because he has some credibility there. And he actually became an Adventist, and Jesus spoke to him one day. Like, he had some questions. An Adventist had spoke to him, and the demons, he was never around people. He was always surrounded by demons, because the demons were always taking care of him, and, you know, the fallen angels. And he was never without them. Like, they were always there in his life. And when an Adventist tried to start talking to him about Jesus, he was like, "Don't talk to that guy. Don't talk to that guy. Get away from that guy. Don't talk to that guy." And, you know, he had questions, and he was in his room. The demons were there, but when he actually had questions in his mind about Jesus, a light appeared, Jesus appeared, and all the demons were gone. For once in his life, he was finally alone, like, without the demons. And he had like a 4-hour conversation with Jesus, and then gave his life to Jesus. So a lot of the things he says in his book are pretty interesting about what happens on the other side, you know, on the dark side, you know, the Satan side. The meetings that they have, he was going to high-level meetings. He was considered a prince, you know, one of Satan's princes. He was told all the time from the demons that he was a prince. You know, he was one of the Satan's princes and one of his most dearest, you know, children or whatever. It was just, it's, you know, it's scary, but, you know, it's interesting what happens on that side. The people in power have to know who their allegiance is and who they're working for, in my opinion.
Okay, and according to Google, yes, in South Carolina, you can change a real ID back to a standard non-compliant driver's license.
There you go.
Or identification card. That's
Thank
Google.
you.
Now, I'll get to you. There's one question I had as well. Are you saying, am I getting this right? As Christians, we are to own nothing and be happy. And when the CBDC comes in, we do the same thing, own nothing and be happy.
Yes, that's the World Economic Forum's plan as well. Own nothing and be happy. But as Adventists, we should really be happy when we own nothing.
I just want to add to the Real ID conversation. According to AI, enhanced driver license issued by Washington, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, and Vermont are considered acceptable alternatives to Real ID compliant cards. Mm-hmm. So that's why you're getting through with your New York EDL. And further, it says there's several alternatives that exist for those who do not possess the Real ID, and that includes a passport and the EDLs as well. the US passport book and passport card are both Real ID compliant. Because in the US passport book, there is also that little chip that gets all the information that they need. So we can travel on the EDLs or the passport or the Real ID. They're all going to get the information that they need.
Yep.
Good
absolutely.
shot.
I was just going to say, in reference to what the brother asked as well, these people really, really hate.
You have to bring the microphone closer.
Sorry. These people really, really hate God.
Yeah.
And they have rejected truth. And so there's no limit to how far they'll go with what they're doing. Satan thought that if he struck up a big enough rebellion, he could actually take over heaven. He deceived himself, and now he's deceiving a lot of others. So these people don't expect to lose. They think that if they do this thing well enough, they will win and they will take over and they will conquer. So they have just been deceived by the greatest deceiver who deceived himself first, because the biggest fool is the one that fooled himself, and that's what Satan did to start with. And now he has others behind him, you know. So I don't believe that they're thinking every day that, listen, we're betting on horses and I know this horse is going to lose and I'm going to bet on it. No, they actually think this horse is going to go through. You know, so, you know, we have to have pity for them. We have to love them. We have to try to pull them out, because as I read in the Spirit of Prophecy and in the scriptures, the ones that are going to be closest to God in the end are those who were snatched from all this evil. Not just regular sinners going about their daily work, but those who were the closest, the right hand of the devil that were snatched are going to be closest to him. So somebody has to be working to help these people.
I want to touch a little bit on what Dan was talking about, the leaders knowing or not knowing. And Spirit of Prophecy says that some of the leaders don't know. And they're deceived. And I would like to think that those are some of the ones that might be coming over to Lord's side when they hear the Christians in court. You know. And another thing I'd like to bring out is you know, we've been wanting to know details of how can all this come about. And I think what you presented this Sabbath, we know more details. And but I think what it's leading us to is we have to have a change of mindset. Instead of thinking about all the things that we can do or not do with the world, we need to be more heavenly minded instead of more earthly minded. And God is leading his people. Where you know it or not, he's leading.
Yes, amen.
You know, sometimes we think that our children and our grandchildren are addicted to their phones and social media, but how many of us are addicted to social media and our phones?
Yep, that's for sure. Yeah, it's definitely addictive to use social media.
And if CBDC benefits nobody, why would rich people go for this system?
Well, they think they're on another level, and they think that they have special privileges. It's so funny that if you watch the Great Taking documentary, he's been going around to the rich people to warn them about this as well. And he says in the documentary, rich people think they're special. And he says, I tell them you are special. They're saving you for dessert. They're not going to be immune to all of this, but they think they're special. They think they're on another level. They think they're in a special club where they can avoid all of this.
I'm going to change the kind of tone or subject. You showed at the end, you did classes for the foraging. I was just wondering if you had, do you do it online? Do you help, or do you?
No,
I'm interested in it very much.
I have not done it online. I haven't. It was just for our Adventist youth program at the Morristown SDA Church that I did it, and it was requested a second time because, like, a lot of the churches in the area found out about it and they were very interested in it, and they came to the second class. But there is a wonderful. I don't know. There's some foragers that are like nationwide, like Nicole Apelian. She covers plants all over the place. There is a wonderful Adventist lady who is a great forager for the Pacific Northwest. I know that doesn't really help you here in South Carolina, but she's got wonderful information, and you know, you could possibly reach out to her and see if she's willing to do a program for you, because she does that. She does programs for different areas. She's up in the Pacific Northwest, but then she did a program for Southern California. Her name is Dawn Trammell, Trammell, and she does foraging, and she teaches foraging classes, and she's got a wealth of knowledge. I don't know about any free apps for that, but I pay for an app that does that. Yeah, it's. Yeah. 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 That's true. If we're good stewards of God's things that He's entrusted to us, then we own nothing and we're just stewards. And we shouldn't be worried if it's taken from us. Yeah, of course.
So I remember early on you mentioned some economists and some of those other professionals predicting by 2030 certain things would probably be on stream.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was a little surprised. I'm thinking more like 2027, another year or two, because the technology is so far advanced already. I didn't think the long term, and I think Jesus is coming soon, so I thought 2030 was like so far out there. I never thought of that.
Well, Jesus is coming soon. We know that. This is just what they're projecting, barring any unforeseen crisis that might come to speed things up, expedite things. They can bring a crisis at any time. There was, I spoke about once, one of the